This is Kim Rivers for the Samuel Proctor Oral History Program, University of Florida. Today is May 28th, 2023. I'm here with Jeanie. And Jeanie, would you tell us please your full name, where you were born, and where you live now?
Okay, my name is Jeanie Fitchen, given name Ms.Jeanie Fitchen, and I was born and raised in Orlando, and I now reside in Brevard County, Cocoa, Florida.
Do you remember your first festival?
I sure do. Sure do. I was 15, and I came here with my mom and my dad, and I thought since it was a Stephen Foster Memorial, I should dress like, the Southern Belles did. And my mom made me this beautiful, full-length Southern Belle costume. And so I didn't perform in that all weekend, but I did wear that to at least one of the events. And I fit in. I think I fit in pretty well. And I remember I sang traditional music only. I had back then I really did only traditional music. And that's what they really wanted me to do. And I think the programs at that time listed our songs. So we needed to know what we were going to perform before we actually arrived here so it could get printed in the program. And we had to stick to that, of course. So, yep, that was a beautiful first time.
So, how many is it now? What keeps you coming back?
What keeps me coming back is it's just such a marvelous family reunion, for one thing. And it's a beautiful way to remember the past with not only with the music, but with the storytelling and the dancing and all of the crafts and the demonstrating crafts people. We learn so much. I learn so much every time we're here from young people and older people. And I think from what I've seen in the past, when people come here for the first time, they get hooked and then they keep coming. It's just one of those things.
Can you remember someone from the Florida Folk Festival that's influenced you pretty heavily, and could you tell us about them?
Well, first person that comes to my mind is Cousin Thelma Bolton, because she was such a force. As the director, when I first came, she was the director of the Florida Folk Festival. And then throughout the years, she stepped back from that role and just maintained her role as MC, a storyteller, and funny person. And I think she taught me a lot. She taught me a lot about performing. And I used to sit on the stage with her. She'd sit in her rocking chair, and I'd sit in a chair next to her while she's emceeing. When I wasn't performing, I just sat next to her, and it was like being a part of the whole process of all the entertainment back then. When, in the early days, it was on the old marble stage. That was the main stage. And there were bleachers behind the stage, and the performers sat in the small bleachers behind the stage. And I sat there all weekend. To me, I didn't want to miss anything. We had just had one stage, the marble stage, and there was no need for me to go anywhere else. I mean, everything was right there. And Cousin Thelma was, with her stories and with her little anecdotes, and we have them actually recorded. And I did a program. I did a CD called A Part of Me, Growing Up at White Springs. And we just had a very small run of that, and we sold out of that. We don't have any more, but we have some of her recordings on that. Some of the things she said from the stage, like, give that crying baby a sugar tit, that sort of thing. She was delightful.
So it's not really convenient to get here, and sometimes it's hot.
Most times it's hot.
What keeps you coming back?
Well, the lack of comfort and the heat and the humidity and ticks sometimes that we have to endure. That's really not even something that we worry about so much. We say to ourselves, this is something that we endure in order to be here because we want to be here. We want to be here because we love it so much. So when we have the heat, in some years it's extremely hot and humid and uncomfortable and stormy. We have that a lot. And then there are times like this year when it's absolutely incredibly beautiful and wonderful. And we all consider it a great gift when it's like this. I do remember a couple of times in the past when it was like this as well.
Can you think of a time when the festival was canceled?
Well, I remember, yes, when after the big, what they call the hippie surge, it wasn't canceled. It was just moved to a different date the following year. It was moved from May to August, and it seemed back to normal. And just moving that date made such a big difference. And then, of course, we had, I don't remember the year exactly, but we had major fires up in this area, and there was so much smoke. And just a few days before the festival, it was canceled because it was just too hazardous for anyone to be here. But then we had the festival in November of that year. We were fortunate enough to be able to do it in November, and it was beautiful. It was cold at night. We had fires around the camp, and it was beautiful. So, and then, of course, when COVID came along, we had to cancel it. But other than that, I can't think of any other time or any reason in the past.
So, it said there's a lot of love in the Florida folk family. Mm-hmm. What are some of the ways that the folk family shows love to one another?
Well, from my perspective as a musician and performer, a prime example is that I'm a solo performer, right? I come to this festival. And today, in fact, I had 6 musicians on stage with me. Because we see each other, we all love each other, we recognize our skills, and we work together for 5 minutes, go over something for 5 minutes, and these people are so talented and so good at what they do. It's almost like we can all read each other's mind. We know what should be done, what this person expects, what that person expects. So when we're all together, it's just like a big family of musicians. That's...
Could you say that last line again? I coughed over you when we're all together. It's like this.
Yes, so when we're all together, it's just one big happy family of musicians. And it's almost like we're siblings, and we can perform like siblings.
It's an interesting one. If you have a Florida Folk Festival legacy, which doubtless you will, if you could wish it to be something, what would you like your legacy to be?
What would I like it to be? I would like it to be that young people would be continued to be inspired to take on the past, to sing songs and tell stories about the way it used to be, because as Florida being now 3rd in population and first in my domestic migration, people are coming to Florida and they have no concept of the real history, the colorful history that we have here. They have no concept, some of these people, of the beautiful wild rivers that we have throughout Florida and beautiful places. So if we as performers, as leaving any kind of legacy with our young people, to encourage them to continue to write songs and write stories that will protect our environment and will carry on our traditions and our culture, the real old Florida, because it's part of our past and it's really important.
So when you say old Florida, our traditions. Could you describe some of what you mean by that?
I'm thinking of, well, for instance, I've lived in Brevard County for a number of years, and the history of the Brevard County area, the Indian River, and how the river was so important in the old days for not just moving people from here to there, but to moving food and all of the important things that we need. They would use that river to get from up to Jacksonville, for instance, to then be distributed to other parts of the state and outside of Florida as well. So I just think that's so important to remember how it used to be in the hard old days, before we had vehicles and before we had all the comforts that we have today. And when I do my children's program, we take them back in their imagination. I always say, like, let's say 100 years ago, to when old grandpa was really, really, really little and we didn't have all of these things. And some of the things we talk about, they look at me like, what is that? I have no concept of using a washboard to wash clothes. Well, that's not how I do it. I use a washer and dryer, that sort of thing. So I just think that that's not just Florida, that's everywhere. But I think Florida's just got a special color that doesn't exist in other states that we just need to make sure that the rest of the world knows about.
So the Swanee Snakes by the festival, is there a significance or a role that it plays in the Florida folk festival culture?
Oh, I think so, tremendously. All one has to do is look at all of the songs that have been written in the past 30, 40 years about Florida and the music and how much the Swanee River comes into it, and to know how important it is. And then this festival, 71-year-old festival on the banks of the Swanee River, to me, that really makes the Swanee River famous to everyone, is the Florida Folk Festival.
This one can be fun. How about sometime when you might have felt really embarrassed at the festival?
Oh. Well, this is a really interesting story. The Songwriters Gazebo, Florida Songwriters Gazebo, is really an important venue as part of the Florida Folk Festival. And one year, this was after Ann Thomas had passed. One year, I was getting ready to perform, and we had storms all around us. And I'm waiting off stage with my guitar to go up on the gazebo to start my program. And all of a sudden, I had a wardrobe malfunction. Out of the blue, one of the most ridiculous things in the world. And I thought, of all times, for this to happen? So I set my guitar down. I went out to our van. I took care of the problem. While I was gone, lightning struck the tree over which I was standing, and a huge branch fell right where I was standing. So if I had been standing there when that had happened, I probably would have been killed. So I think that was Ann Thomas probably looking out for me at that time. But it would have been very embarrassing for me to go on stage with my wardrobe malfunction, so I had to leave. It was a requirement. But I can't think of any other embarrassing moment other than the times that I've made mistakes on stage, which we all do.
Since you brought up Anne, anything you want to say about her or your experience with her? Or...
she was a character. What a character she was, and Frank too. Over the years they have been so supportive of Florida musicians and giving us all jobs to do. It's your job to write a song about this or write a song about that, and that's why we have such a wonderful list of Florida songs. I can't even think of another state that would have as many songs written about their state, about the people, the culture, the flora, the fauna. They are responsible for that from way back. And Ann was a character. You know, when you went on the gazebo stage, you had to sing Florida songs. And if you didn't, she let you know that that was not an acceptable song. And that did happen to some people. They were a little bit intimidated until they understood. You know, if they were very new and they really didn't understand, well, what's a Florida song? What do you mean by that? And then they learned really fast, the hard way.
Thank you for bringing Ann up. Okay. Do you have any rituals or traditions? It's like every year you do X, you know, like.
You mean right here when we're here at the festival?
Yes, like every year I stick my big toe in the Swanee.
Well, we used to every year, following the Monday morning meeting and all that, we would all go canoeing. A group of us would go canoeing. We'd spend the whole afternoon on the river. And then I think that changed a few years ago when the accessing canoes wasn't as easy to do that. And of course we're getting older and a lot of people weren't comfortable doing that. We always, on Monday following the folk festival, a bunch of us will empty our coolers for lunch. Whatever's left, we share. We put out on a table and we share, and we talk about the weekend and the highlights of the weekend and what we enjoyed most. And that's a tradition for us. We make our own traditions.
So during the folk festival, what's a day like? What happens? A day in the life?
A day in the life of the folk festival, depending on if you're a single performer or if you're a musician who is what we call a lot of our musician friends, you know, they just play with so many different groups and they're busy because they have to be here and there and there. They have to, you know, I don't know how they work out their schedules, but for them it must be quite confusing. I think for most people, we have we're doing a stage late morning, one stage, and then we have a couple hours to rest and we move to another stage. And then if you're performing at night, you have one night on the weekend, never more than one night. And in between, you're playing music with other people. So it's really like music goes on all the time. Then in the evening when the program's over, we go back to our camp and then we play more and more and more. And sometimes we stay up too late and then we're exhausted the next day, but in a good way.
So you've kind of led me to could you like compare and contrast normal camping with camping during the folk festival here?
Well, actually, it's funny. I took a video yesterday or the day before of our campsite where it's actually a double campsite. There's a campsite here and a campsite on this side. We probably have 1, 2, 3, 4 motorhomes. 1, 2, 3 tents and an awning set up. You can barely walk through. And normally, the campground's a beautiful campground, and their sites are quite private, lovely with trees and everything. So normally there'd be one camper in that site, and with all these people, you would think you'd be uncomfortable. No, not at all, not at all. We share food, we share water. Wayne Martin is one of our campers. He sets up a sink with hot water, and we wash our dishes at the sink. He sometimes in the morning comes out and cooks sausage and bacon, and it's like a family reunion, definitely like a family reunion in each campsite. And it's quiet. People are amazed. They walk through the campground, and you think there'd be loud voices and lots of uncomfortable noises. Not at all. It's amazing to see so many vehicles, so many people, and this calmness that exists throughout. Probably not like a bluegrass festival or a rock festival. It'd probably be very different from that, but it's amazing.
Do you still remember the old campground before the double bathhouses? And
It's funny, I don't remember details so much. I just remember very crowded, extremely crowded. But I don't remember that. It's funny, when I go back, I don't remember a lot of those details because that's not what I was there for. I was there for the people and the music.
could you describe a gift you've gotten during a folk festival?
A gift I've gotten? Well, you mean
Doesn't have to be touchable, tangible, intangible.
tangible or
Any
intangible?
gift, a rock, anything.
Oh, Well, one year, yes, this was amazing. One year I was performing at night, and I believe someone came behind stage and gave me a note and said, "Please come to my booth," or where he was set up. He was a luthier. It was one of the demonstrating luthiers that we had here. Is one of the craftspeople. And I thought, now why does he want me to do that? So the next day, I was busy throughout the day. I didn't do anything. But then the third day, I thought, it would be unkind of me not to go and follow through on this. So I did go to his. He was actually in the museum. That's where he had his guitars and all of the instruments that he made. And he said, "I just want you to pick one of my guitars for yourself." He said, "I listened to you perform, and I really want you to have one of my guitars." So he gave me one of his beautiful, beautiful guitars. And that was one of the finest gifts I've ever received because of my music, that sort of thing. So, that was very memorable. Beautiful koa guitar, beautifully koa wood, Hawaiian wood, and it has such a warm, beautiful sound to it. It's small, too. It's a small guitar made for a woman. It was perfect, really perfect.
Cool story. Am I keeping you too long?
Not at all. I know you had an appointment at 2, right?
Correct. And give the dates.
My first what?
Your first 2 times here, and give the dates. The difference between
1967. Oh yeah, I could do that. That would be an interesting thing, probably. My first year and second year. The first year I came with my family, and met Cousin Thelma, and met the Beers family, who Bob and Evelyn and their daughter. They had come from New York to perform here. They were friends with Cousin Thelma, and they fashioned their festival up in Petersburg, New York, after our festival here. They had one in August. So the first year I came here, I met them, met the Cousin Thelma for the first time, and they invited me to their festival in New York that August. So my mother and I went up to that festival. Cousin Thelma was also up there, and we stayed in these teeny little cabins on a hill. And I performed as part of Children's Day on Friday, because I was, at the time, I had my 16th birthday up there, that's right. And then the rest of the weekend, and they had really wonderful folk musicians from all over the world performing at their festival up there. So then, so the following year, I didn't have any other way to get to the festival. So Mom and Dad put me on a Greyhound bus, and I rode from Orlando to, we stopped in Gainesville, and then came here in White Springs. And Cousin Thelma, of course, didn't drive, right? But she met me at this little, I guess that was in 1968. She met me. The first festival was 67, the second one was 68, yeah. So she met me with her driver outside of the little convenience store. There was only store that was like a convenience store at that time. And it had potholes, and it was a Scenic Cruiser, Greyhound Scenic Cruiser. And all the people were asleep on the bus until it pulled into this little parking lot with all the potholes and jostled everybody awake, and they look out the window and they see Cousin Thelma standing in her long gown, white. She was wearing white. It was probably like a ghost to them, looking at a ghost out there with her driver standing next to it. And I get off the Greyhound bus with my guitar, and they were just like, "What are we doing in this little town, this is a part of our, they had no idea they were stopping there. It wasn't really a stop. It was just a special stop, I guess, to let me off. Anyway, I stayed with Cousin Thelma, and that evening we had dinner at the Colonial Hotel because it was still there, and that's when I met so many people, new people for the first time. That was a memorable folk festival. I was there all by myself, staying with Cousin Thelma. It was like my mom.
Is there a question you wish I had asked and I didn't ask you?
Which question?
Is there one I did not
Oh,
ask
is there
you
one?
that you wish I had?
You're not recording right this minute, right?
Yes, it's recording.
Okay. Sorry.
Let's see. I can't think of anything. Is there anything that I want to say that should be said? I can't think of anything except that in all the years that I've been coming, so many people have passed. A lot of people have moved away because they've had to, but there are a lot of people who can no longer come because they're not able to, and a lot of people have passed, and it's really, really sad. There are just a few of us old timers left.
So that leads to so we who have been around a lot, what do you think we should do to help ensure that the festival keeps going?
I know it's always a concern because it's such a huge event. It's not a simple thing. It really isn't. And to keep it going, it requires a huge staff, a huge number of volunteers, people supporting it, people who want it to be here. But I can't think of anything more important to Florida than to preserve this event, this specific event. And how difficult would it be? It'd be great if we could have a foundation like some of the other music festivals have, where it's kind of assured when you have this nonprofit foundation that is supporting an event like this, and then you have more to work with, I think. And you always have volunteers. And as long as you have volunteers, things happen, things get done. So, and it is so important that it can. Well, there have been many times in the past when we didn't know what was going to happen the next year. We worried about it, but it did happen. People made it happen. It was like we cannot let it go away. It can't go away. So I think there'll always be people out there who are going to say, this is what we're going to do to make sure it happens.
I think we're about wrapped up, except send a message to people 20 years from now, if you please, about why it's important, or you have advice for them.
Well, that's another generation, 20 years from now. So the only way for that to be important to them 20 years from now is that the little ones now are exposed to this. I think that I always say, if you want something to be protected, you've got to learn to love it. You've got to teach them to love it, because if they love it, they will protect it. So the generation that is existing now, raising children now in the future, those children are the ones who are going to have to carry it on. And we have to expose them to this. And there were a lot more children this year, I think, families with children. And they're having a wonderful time. And it's just, they're like sponges. So all of this is just going into their brains. And if they can come year after year after year, it'll become part of their life. That's what happened to a lot of the musicians and performers and dancers here. They grew up here. And it's part of their life. And that's why when we come together, it's like a big family reunion. That's what I think.